Hello everybody, my name is Nate Moore. I'm a member of the Science Department at General McLean High School, and I am beginning my 10th year of teaching at General McLean High School this year. I'm dual certified in both biology and chemistry, and this year I'll have the opportunity to teach classes from both disciplines. This year, as I'm sure we're all aware, is going to be a year like no other. There will be new challenges, but with new challenges come new opportunities to learn and grow in ways that we never thought possible before. So I have no doubt that we'll be learning and growing in these new ways together. For the course, most of what we will do will be on the iPad. In fact, at this point in time, my plan is to conduct 99% of everything that we do on the iPad and distribute and collect all work through Schoology. If the event occurs that I would need to give a hard copy handout, I think that it would be rare this year. So aside from your iPad, you will need a folder just for the miscellaneous handouts that we might come up with from time to time. I would like to begin now with a tour of my classroom and then a brief description of the course that you will be. Here's our classroom. As you can see, it's a lab and classroom in one. It seats 12 students socially distanced, and as we work through sanitation procedures, we will look to incorporate labs this year. And now I'd like to take a little bit of time to tell you some more about Biology 1. Biology 1 is the first half of the content that is eligible for the Keystone exam. Every student at General McLean High School must take the Biology Keystone exam. And students will take the Biology Keystone exam after completing Biology 1 and Biology 2. Biology 1 will probably be taken during freshman year, and Biology 2 will most likely be taken during the sophomore year, with the Keystone exam coming at the end of Biology 2. Now, let's take a look at some of the units that we will discuss in Biology 1. We begin Biology 1 with our first unit, Biological Principles. And biological principles include things like water properties, what makes water so special and why is it essential for life, since biology is, after all, the study of life. And we also take a look at how the living world is organized, starting with atoms and working our way all the way up to the entire planet. So you can see in this diagram here, this is called the biological levels of organization, where we start at atoms and move up to molecules and then to cells, and all the way on up again to the entire world. And once you kind of start looking at the world in this way, it's a really different way to see the world around you, and I hope it really kind of piques some of our students' interests and gets them to look at things in a slightly different way after they get a chance to talk about it and explore it in class. In the second unit, we start, quite honestly, at the smallest of the biological levels of organization, talking about atoms and molecules, because everything in biology is built on basically 4 classes of molecules. We have carbohydrates, which are sugars. We have proteins, which are kind of like the machines inside the cell. We have nucleic acids that store our genetic information and pass it along from one generation to the next. And we have lipids that do different things for us, like maintaining the fluidity in our cell membranes, providing insulation, energy storage. And so each of these biological macromolecules, as they're called, has a different function and a different role to play in our bodies and the body, the living things around us. So this can be a really difficult concept because we're thinking about things that we obviously cannot touch and we can't see either. So it really requires a pretty good amount of imagination to try to make sense of how all these things fit together. But we'll spend a lot of time practicing identifying the different classes of macromolecules, and again, reviewing what each one does for us and why they're important. Then, after spending time talking about those atoms and molecules in the biological macromolecules, we move up to the next biological level of organization, which is the cell. The cell is the basic unit of life. You can't have a living thing that is smaller than a cell. If you have pieces that are smaller than cells, then they are kind of like just building blocks waiting to be assembled into this cell, which is, it can be a complete living creature, or it can be one of the billions of cells that make up your body. So when we talk about the cell, we talk about all the different parts of a plant and animal cell, and also a bacterial cell too. So plant and animal cells are known as eukaryotic cells, and bacteria are known as prokaryotic cells, and we'll talk about the differences between those two. Okay, but right now in this picture, we're looking at a eukaryotic cell, a plant cell, and you notice all the different little compartments in there and the different colored regions in there. Those all have different specific jobs inside the cell. It's almost like a little town or a little factory inside the cell. And so we'll talk about what all those different regions are for and what they do. And then once you kind of understand that, once the students understand that, I hope they sit back and marvel at what a beautiful machine their body is, and all the cells working constantly every day and in concert to allow them to go about their daily tasks and do everything they do. So honestly, that's one of the things that I love most about biology, is just when you step back and appreciate how these little things make the much larger organism actually function. Now, after we introduce the cell, some of the regions that we talk about, and actually the outer membrane of the cell itself, are super important to every cell's life cycle, because they help the cell maintain a consistent set of internal conditions. And that process where we maintain a consistent set of internal positions is called homeostasis. So our next unit is about how cells maintain homeostasis. And if you think about it, this is kind of how a house works too. In your house, you bring in water and you bring in electricity to keep the house running and keep the living space inside nice. And after you eat the food, prepare the food, you have to clean up after dinner, you have to take the garbage outside, and basically that's what your cells are doing all day long, even while you're sleeping. They are bringing in new nutrients so that they can continue to run and grow and build and eventually replicate. And after all those processes are done, they have to get rid of the waste, the same way we have to take out the trash from our house. So we take a good look at how cells go about maintaining that constant set of internal conditions with the process called homeostasis. After we discuss homeostasis, we get into the topic of cellular reproduction, and we talk about two different types of cellular reproduction. We talk about mitosis, which is how most of the cells in your body are created and renewed, basically. So part of cell theory, which we didn't talk about in any part of this introduction, but part of cell theory is that all cells arise from other cells. They don't spontaneously generate or anything like that. So in order for cells to arise, they have to come from cells that already existed. And that happens through a process called mitosis in most cases. But we will also take a look at meiosis, which is what produces the sperm and the eggs in humans and the other gametes or sex cells in other organisms, and allow for the reproduction of the species. And that process allows for the unique combination of genes that make each one of us unique individuals at the end of the day. So cellular reproduction is the topic of Unit 5. And then we wrap up this Biology 1 course with an examination of ecology. So we've spent most of Biology 1 down at the atom, the molecule, the cellular level. And then we jump many levels of biological organization up to ecology. So this is kind of a nice way to wrap up the course, quite honestly, after spending so much time thinking about the abstract, the cells that we can see with a microscope, but not with our naked eye. Then we get to talk about ecology, and we get to talk about how organisms interact with their environment and how energy flows through the ecosystem. And it really is just kind of a nice breath of fresh air after, again, dealing with all the microscopic aspects of biology leading up to that point. But we have to remember too that all the stuff that we see in this interaction of all these different species in this, in this African savanna, for example, they happen because of all the cellular processes that are happening throughout all these organisms all day long. And when you stop and think about it again, I think that's such an amazing thing. So I hope that you will enjoy Biology 1, and I hope that you will ask many questions throughout the class. As I mentioned before, about 99% of the work that we will do this year will be distributed and collected through Schoology. The students are quite familiar with this at this point in time, at least working through the iPad app, but I would like to take a moment to highlight something else that I think will be crucial this year, and that is that if you sign on to Schoology through schoology.generalmcclain.org in a web browser like Safari on the iPad, and I know it seems silly that signing in on Safari versus the app would have any difference, but it actually does. Because when you sign in on a web browser, if I have set an assignment as due and a student wants to check whether or not something was submitted, Schoology has a neat feature, or at least it has in all other years previous, where when you are in a web browser, it will flag overdue assignments in the sidebar for you. So it is another way to stay on top of your work, not only in my class, but in all of the classes that you will take this year. So again, signing on to schoology.generalmcclain.org through a web browser will let you view your overdue assignments. And last but not least, even though we will be using Schoology extensively, PowerSchool will still be the official grade of record. So we need to just make sure that we're both on the same page with that. And if you have any questions at all about grades throughout the course, please ask me. Feel free to ask sooner rather than later. And we will, again, be looking at PowerSchool as the official grade of record. Thanks for taking the time to take the tour of the classroom with me and listen to a little bit more about the course. I'm sure that I have not answered all of your questions about the course at this point, but that's to be expected. If you have any questions at this point in time or throughout the year, I think email is going to be the best way to contact me this year, at least for initial contact, and my email is nathanmoore, NATHANMOORE @generalmcclain.org. And from there, we can correspond through email, or we can arrange a phone call or a virtual meeting to answer any questions or address any concerns that you might have throughout the year. Again, I anticipate this year is going to present us with many challenges, most of which we don't anticipate at this point in time. So together, we will get through this. And in the meantime, stay safe and all the best to you and your family.